Welcome to the Recruit University Success Series. I'm Coach Kuartez, Director of Recruiting at Recruit University. Today I have a special guest today. He is the host of the Full Ride podcast, Coach Kito Delgado. Kito, welcome to the call.
How we doing, my man? Thanks for having me tonight.
Oh, no problem, man. Listen, you have this Full Ride podcast, and you've been consistent with it for, over 2 years?
About
Tell
two,
me a little bit
maybe even
about that.
three.
3 years, okay.
So, me, myself, in general, I just love listening to podcasts. And, I understand people learn different styles. Some like to read, some like to watch videos. Some learn obviously by doing, but clearly podcasting is a great way to reach a broad audience. And so being someone who actually likes to listen to podcasts, and that's how I learn, I figured, I really wanted to get into this space. And when I started looking for podcasts, ideas for college recruiting, just to kind of not to steal from them, but just to kind of see, how they go about it, what what their style is like and what topics they're covering. I quickly learned that there really isn't a lot of college recruiting podcasts out there. So I just said a few years back that, let me be that person. And I'm sure now that there are other podcasts, that you can learn from. But, I did it from a standpoint of being a former college athlete. I thought that would be helpful. And then, yes, some episodes are solo episodes, but what I really wanted to do was bring, other former college athletes to the show, so that they can tell their stories. And then, we cover all types of sports, all levels. I've been pretty blessed, pretty fortunate to interview, national champions on the show, people who have gone on to, become Olympic gold medalists in their sports. So we've had some really, great guests who, have taken the time out of their busy schedules, to really, at the end of the day, bless our student athletes and their parents.
That's awesome. So what made you get started with this podcast?
Um, you know, I I really just started to get into this industry, I should say, really, where I was at a job, a few years back. I was a sales supervisor, business to business sales supervisor, and one of the employees that I managed, I just happened to at the end of the night, I overheard her on the phone with her student or her son, who at the time was in high school. He was a senior. He played football, and he had aspirations to play um, college athletics, college football in particular. And I kind of heard her, and I could tell her, I can hear she was just trying to console him. So I knew something wasn't going right. And I didn't want to be all up in her business, but just being her supervisor, I just kind of at the end, when she hung up, I said, "Is everything okay?" She was like, "Yeah, my son, he's just super disappointed in the recruiting process. He thought he'd have offers. He thought the school would do more for him. He thought his coach would do more for him. He starts, he does well, he works so hard." And, he was just really frustrated that a school that he thought was gonna, offer him, because they were talking to him, they just basically stopped returning his calls. They started ghosting him. So, like any good mom, she was trying to, make him feel better about the circumstances. But then, just having, and maybe we'll get into it in a little bit, but based off of my previous experience, as a college athlete, I just said, "Hey, let's, I'm walking out, but if you want to walk, because at the end of the day, I was like, I'm walking out, but if you want to walk out with me, I'll share some insights with you." So kind of fast forward a little bit, we've probably spent a good 30 to 45 minutes in the parking lot that night. And just kind of giving her a crash course on college recruiting, and really debunking a number of the myths that a lot of parents and their kids fall victim to. So fast forward, very next day she comes in and she brings me a coffee, and she says, "Kito, obviously, you have your job here. You're really good at this job. Um, but if you ever wanted to, start your own business, I really think you have something here with this college recruiting, because there's so many of us parents out here who are just, we don't know what we're doing. We're going to one another for advice, but we didn't play in college. Our schools, yeah, they mean well. The coaches mean well, but many of them, they don't have experience with college recruiting. And I think you can really, be of value to a lot of families. So that was really, my light bulb, my aha moment, where I was like, you know what, how can I, take my experiences, not only as a former college athlete, but as someone who is, very experienced in selling, because that's ultimately what college recruiting, a lot of it's about, is selling yourself, and creating value, to college coaches in their programs. How can I kind of, create a program, and create resources, hence my podcast, that can really, add that value, not only to the families that I work with, but then also to the school districts that I work with, who, again, don't have the resources or the experience, really, when it comes to, navigating the recruiting process.
Hey, that's a great story. I mean, our stories are very similar. And I'm pretty sure that we run into across like similar parents too. Like this story, so many parents go through the same thing. They thought that the high school coach was going to help them out. And some of them wait till the last minute and have no idea what to do. Why do you think it takes parents so long before they decide to, okay, maybe I need some help from somebody else? Maybe they don't know the help exists?
I mean, because think about it, most parents are amazing parents, right? And they just figure stuff out.
Yeah.
Let's just be real. I'm a dad myself. There's a lot of things that I think, even though I'm not, fully experienced in, I'm like, oh, I can go to YouTube. I can learn. I can read books. I can do certain things. But the problem with college recruiting is, you don't really, like, most parents come to the realization that, okay, yeah, it's time to start taking college recruiting seriously, until it's too late. So they may look at it their senior year, like, okay,
Mhm.
going, like, if like me, and I don't know if you're a parent, but like, you look out a year out, okay, well, my kid's going into, they're starting a new grade, or they're going from middle school to from elementary to middle school, from middle to high school. So you can kind of start planning stuff, a year out. Well, fine. So maybe you're thinking as a parent, okay, great. My son, daughter, they're going to be going away to college a year from now. So then they start to, let me start researching here. Let me start learning about the process. And then, with that, that, of course, they're going to start turning to social media as, as a way to learn. They're going to turn to other parents, oh, your son went to the school. What you guys do?
Mhm.
And by that point, it's no fault of their own, but we know the stats. How most most parents, they didn't play at the next level. They've never experienced the college recruiting process. And when it comes to their son or daughter, yeah, there are some families where they make all their mistakes on the first child, and then the second or third athlete comes along, and now they kind of have it, they know, because
Yeah.
they learned through experience. But for the most part, most families are going through the recruiting process for the very first time. It is doesn't make them bad parents, but they're just misinformed.
Mhm.
And by the time they really get focused on it, it's their junior year, their student athletes junior year or senior year. And by that point, something, gets in the, not in the way, but there's certain challenges that are presented to them, as a family, getting serious their senior year, rather. But if they had just really were proactive their freshman year, they'd be in a much different situation. So I just think it's this lack of experience.
Yeah, lack of experience, and then you got, like I said, misinformation really gets out there a lot, and
Mhm.
I had to debunk a lot of myths as well. The first one, that number one is, if you're good enough, they'll find you. Talk about that. Has people said that to you before?
We get it all the time, right? And I don't mean to laugh. I don't mean to laugh at, student athletes and their parents' pain, but
Mhm.
that's probably easily the number one thing I hear. I
Yeah.
don't understand it. you know, this, and really they play the compare game, right? So they'll
Mhm.
say, I don't understand it. My son, you know, um, was all conference. They have more yards, they have more touchdowns,
Mhm.
they made first team. Like, I don't get why isn't my son or daughter getting offers, but this other kid across town, uh, who has half his stats,
Yeah,
has 10 offers, and they're like shocked, and they just think that these coaches is going to find them because they have some articles written up about them. But that's just a huge myth. I mean, at the end of the day, these coaches, they in every program is different, but ultimately, they each have their own methods of discovering student athletes.
absolutely.
And if it works for them, guess what they do? They keep going back
Absolutely.
to the same well, and they keep going
Yes.
to those same sources over and over and over again.
Right.
So if you're not going to organically get discovered through their normal channels, then it's up to you as a student athlete to to interrupt their pattern, is what I
Absolutely.
tell the families that I work with. You got to interrupt it, and the way you interrupt it is by being proactive.
Absolutely. 100% agree with that. I couldn't have said it better myself. I love it. Uh, and like, I'm not necessarily talking about the parent themselves, right? Because they're going to hear this information from people who may be like a Pop Warner coach or AAU coach, travel ball coach, or something like that. They're going to hear, oh, if you're good enough, they'll find you, or they got to go to this showcase, they got to go to this camp, um, or you don't need to pay for a service that you can do yourself. Talk about that. Have you heard that one? You don't need to pay any
Yeah.
money to get recruited.
Well, see, I'm kind of like in the middle with this. Like,
Mhm.
I don't think you have to pay someone something. Now, do you have to pay a recruiting service? Maybe not, right? I don't think you have to pay a recruiting service, but you have to pay somehow to educate yourself. So how are you going to learn about the process,
Yes,
right?
absolutely.
And to me, recruiting is a custom endeavor. Like, you
Mhm.
cannot say, well, I know this family member or I know this friend who went through college recruiting and this was their experiences, and now they're going to tell you how they did it. Sure, there may be some things that could be of help to you, but ultimately you don't know. Like, okay, what if their son was like a blue chip All-American? What if their
Right.
daughter had a 4.0 GPA and your kid has a 2.2 GPA? What if they had like a 1400 SAT, your kid has a 900 SAT? What if they played in a power conference and you play for a small school? What if they were an All-American and you were third team all conference? So, like, even trying to get tidbits of information from family and friends who have gone through it before you is helpful. And maybe that's free, but it's still not unique. And I should say it's not
Specific.
specific to
Yes,
your student athlete. So
absolutely.
then now where I do think you should pay for service, but you should pay for guidance,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Right. That's where I come into play. Like, I
Mhm.
don't do like I teach my big tagline is I educate, I equip, and I empower. So
Mhm.
I educate our families on the ins and outs of college recruiting. I equip them with the resources to help them, whether it's telling them to set up social media, YouTube, Huddle, all that stuff. And then I empower them, though, to take control of the process themselves. So ultimately, so that's where I do think some of these services who say, well, we'll get you recruited, I don't really fall in line with them. Like, 'cause I
Yeah.
don't think you need to pay them to do that for you. You got
Mhm.
to do that yourself. But where I come, think of it, if you're a mom and dad, maybe you have an accountant who does your taxes. Maybe you have a family attorney who helps you if you get in any type of legal situations. Maybe you have, you hire a contractor to
Mhm.
do the. So there are certain things that you can do it yourself, right? So I don't say you got to do it yourself with cloud recruiting. I do it with you.
Yes.
And I think there's a difference. There are some, and I'm not going to mention them by names, but I definitely think there are some services out there that they're just they're scam artists, and they say,
Yeah.
well, we'll get you recruited and we'll send you emails. Like, and that's why I push back, and I tell people, like, no, you don't have to pay a service to get noticed by a coach, but you do have to figure out, okay, you got to humble yourself to realize I've never done this before, and my kid probably has one shot at getting this done right. So if we're
Mhm.
going to pay for trainers, right, we pay for these personal trainers, we pay all this money for a travel ball, we pay all this money for equipment, we pay all this travel expense, hotels, gas, all this stuff. we commit so much time to traveling to these events. Doesn't it make sense to get yourself a coach? If you're starting a business, you may have a business consultant. So you can literally list so many examples of when we have that one-on-one coach to kind of guide us because they've been there, done that. College recruiting is no different. And now I may not be for everybody, just like you may not be for everybody. If you go to a DeMatha, a big time program, that pumps out, 15 to 20, Division I football players, St. Thomas Aquinas in Florida. Like if you go to one of these powerhouses and you can ball, you're going to get discovered 100%.
Yeah.
100%. But that's not the majority of aspiring college athletes.
I'm glad you brought that up too. Like the DeMathas and St. Thomas Aquinas, those are big time private programs, right? So I've had too where a parent thinks, oh, well, let me take my kid out of this school and move her over to that school. Can you speak on that?
Well, yeah, I mean, end of the day, and I had no problem with that, right? Some, hey, everyone talks about you got to. I get really frustrated. Transfer portal in college is a big thing where you hear, all these people getting upset. Now, do I think you should just take your kid to 3-4 different high schools? That's probably not the best idea. But let's say you go to a small high school, public school, in Florida, and you have a coach who, has no experience. They don't really have the resources. No college coaches are spending and you play in a small college. No coaches coming to you. And now if you have a family, if your kid is talented enough and you have the means, then sure, why not, go to a program that gives you every opportunity to reach your goals. So I have no problem with it. But again, you got to really, I think one of the biggest, problems families run into with recruiting processes, they're just not realistic.
Yeah, I think that's big. Everybody wants to go to the big D1 school on TV.
Yeah, right? They don't have they have no self-awareness. So it's like, okay, you're gonna leave this small high school, and now you're gonna transfer to this private powerhouse. There's no guarantee that's gonna work out. So for some of these kids, you're just better off just being a big fish in a small pond. And just create amazing highlights, but then take those highlights and again disrupt the pattern of college coaches and just be proactive and reach out to them, and you put yourself on the same footing as these other programs.
Right.
So transferring is not always the answer. But at the same time, I'm not against it.
And there's certain, like you said, it's individualized, right? There's certain experiences. I've had both ways. I've had a kid where I was fighting to stay at his high school because he was already getting offers and he was that big fish in a small pond, but he ended up transferring to a bigger school because they were going to be on ESPN and all this other stuff. Like, dude, you're going to be on ESPN next year. You're already getting scholarships. Why are you leaving?
Yeah, you're good.
Then I had an issue where it was a kid who needed to transfer, right? Because his coach, and I'm going to just be honest with you, and I'm probably sure a lot of people have this happen. His coach just did not like him for whatever reason. His coach wasn't playing him. The kid played well, in other areas. We had issues where we had college coaches liking him and inviting him to the camp, but then when he got to camp, they talked to the coach and was like, no, we're not interested. And the kid was a good kid, but for whatever reason, the coach wasn't experienced, right? And he wanted to do things all my way. I'm a brand new coach. I want to do this. I want to do that. But really messed this kid up. So we had him transfer somewhere else and he got an opportunity to play college. But I've had both ways.
There's no one size fits all. And and families really have to do their homework and figure out what's best for them. Sometimes, I'll be honest, literally I can literally list the pros to, being a good, not great player at a powerhouse. One of the biggest ones is oftentimes you may not be like a beast like that, but coaches are going to be in attendance at every single game. So, and they can't get all the 5 stars. So if you're like a 3-star, that's how you can you get noticed because they're looking at either a teammate or opponent. So
That's
that's
it right
one.
there.
That's one
I wanted to
positive
make
piece.
sure that was clear, right? I want to make sure that was clear because people think, oh, coach is going to be at every game. They're going to be at every game. They're coming. They're coming to see somebody, not necessarily you. You might end up piggybacking off of somebody else. It's the same thing with the AAU.
Yep, 100%, 100%. I agree with that.
Yeah, because I mean, people think, oh, I've seen them take pictures on social media. Oh, Coach K's here at this game. Yeah, but he's watching somebody else. He's not there.
He's not there for you. Yeah, but you can take advantage of that situation.
Yeah, you can. If you end up playing your butt off, against that guy, if you happen to be playing against him.
Exactly. If you ball out. So
yeah.
But again, I think this is where we're just dropping these little nuggets, and the last thing I want to do is overwhelm families and scare them. But it's like these are little things that you sit down with somebody and you really talk, and we're unbiased, right? We don't have it out for your son or daughter, but at the same time we don't have, so we're going to give you honest feedback and assessment, and really just try to help you navigate what's the best possible situation for you. But yeah, there are some kids, but there are so many student athletes. Like my target audience really isn't the all states, the all American type players, because I do think, if they have decent grades and they're ballers like that, most of those kids are gonna get discovered.
Yeah.
It's really those student athletes that good grades, solid grades, 3.0 to 3.5, 3.6, but they just happen to play for a small town, and they may not be a major Division I recruit, but they can certainly get an opportunity to play at the 1AA level for football, or Division II level, or mid-major D1 or D3, or they can at minimum get a 2-year scholarship to a community college and then transfer. Like, so there are so many of those students that the only reason why they're not playing at the next level is not because they don't want to or they don't have the ability or the grades. It's just because they just sat back, they waited too long, and then they just got discouraged. That's really what it is. Like, oh, I guess it's not for me. I'm not good enough. I'll just play club, which is nothing wrong with club, but and they just kind of give up on their dream. Yeah. And if we catch them quick enough and give them a plan, I think we can. That's really satisfying, because now it's not only do they have a chance to play at the next level, but for some families, the only way that they would be going to college is if they got this financial, aid, from through athletics.
Right. Yeah, man, it's a good point, man. Like, we could talk all day about, our different stories, but like you said, the main thing here is to encourage parents that they do need somebody in their corner. You talked about the different levels of the programs. You got D1, D2, D3, NAIA, you got junior college. Why do kids feel like, okay, junior college is not the way to go, or I failed if I didn't go to D1? Do you see a lot of kids feel like that?
I think that's more societal. I think our society has failed them big time.
Yeah.
I can remember vividly, and I'm not blaming my parents, but no, I was fortunate. I did go D1, but I remember growing up, and I came from a very strict household. Like nothing lower than like an 88. We couldn't bring home C's. That wasn't even an option. D's, and as forget that. C's, like I was going to summer school if I got a C in my household. We were super strict, my parents. But I remember my dad, like, he would say to me, like, if you don't get good grades, you're gonna end up going to one of these local community colleges and you're gonna be pumping gas. Like, that's what he would say to me. Now it worked because I was like, but yeah, I don't know where this whole stigma that JUCO is like, I think it's starting to turn the corner. It's changing, slowly but surely. But for a lot of these kids, people have kind of have made it seem like JUCO is only for kids who are troublemakers, kids who have terrible grades. But honestly, I think it's a great it's a great strategy. It's a great resource to use.
Right.
Because if maybe for, especially now when you really are dealing with the transfer portal, like high school student athletes, you got to be something really special to get offered like a full ride, out of high school nowadays.
Yeah. No
Uh,
matter what sport.
no matter the sport.
Yeah.
And a lot of these kids, yeah, they're posting, and I'm not, no shade. Like, listen, I'm happy for you. Like, I don't really care. But at the end of the day, there are so many kids, and schools for that matter, high schools I'm talking about, they host these signing days. The local papers come to the school, and they have the 20 kids on stage, sign their national letters of intent, putting on their baseball caps or whatnot. But knowing how, equivalency sports work, head count sports work, and I'm like, how many of those kids are like signing and they're getting like $10,000 to go attend a school that costs $60,000 a year, right? So yeah, great, they're playing at the next level, but that sport is giving them 10 grand, and meanwhile they're paying $50,000 to go to that school. So after 4 years, they're going to graduate with like $180,000 in debt. So for me, I think it's much more valuable for a lot of these student athletes and their parents to say, you know what, let's be real strategic here. Let's go to JUCO.
Yes.
Get our associate's degree, right? Maybe in many cases, go to get that associate's degree for free because you're on scholarship.
Right.
Get that associate's degree, get bigger, stronger, improve your grades. And now you go into college, you're highly sought after, as a junior, as a JUCO transfer.
Right. Because you can play right now.
You can play right now. You're now, instead of you being 17, 18, showing up to college, you're 19, 20, or 2021 with college experience. You've been away from home for 2 years. You've made the adjustments. You know what to expect. You know the college scheme a little bit better. And a coach is like, because these coaches are in win now mode anyway.
Yeah.
So you give them 2 years, and now, so you go to JUCO for 2 years for free or for very, little money. And now out of pocket money, I mean, and then you transfer into a D2, D1 program, and now you're on a full ride. And now you get your bachelor's degree from that program. You had 2 years to play. So to me, I preach JUCO to the families that I work with.
Yeah, me too.
As an option, like keep your options open.
Absolutely. You did a great job earlier talking about like why a parent needs to have somebody in the corner. But if you could just give me a little nugget, just explain to the parents, hey, why do we need to have a coach in our corner? Just speak on it again, and then share a little bit about your company and what you do.
Yeah, like I said, I think experience is the biggest teacher in life, right? I feel like I'm a much better father now. Not my daughter is 8 than when she was 1. And the reason why is because I've had 7 years now or 8 years as a dad to understand. I learn more about her and how what buttons to push and what when to be a little strict, when to push back. But yeah, I gotten better as a parent because I have that experience, and you can apply that to any walk of life. Same thing, we kind of touched on it. College recruiting. You may have a family, they have 3 kids. They all are really active with sports, and they all have a desire to play at the next level. I guarantee you, they're gonna get. And let's say they all end up having a chance to go and play at the next level. I guarantee you, though, if you talk to that family, they've got much better navigating the college recruiting process with the 3rd child than they did with the 1st child, because they've gone through it 2 times prior. Yeah. So my thing is, if you want to try to experiment on your kid, then sure, go ahead. But for the most part, if you really think about your life and the resources that you have available to you. And whether it's, again, we get trainers for our kids all the time. Why do you get a trainer? You don't have to have a trainer. You can watch YouTube videos and do it yourself, right? Have your son or daughter work out themselves. Why do you have a financial advisor? Why do you have an accountant? If you're starting a business, why do you have a business coach? There's just so many instances in our life where we turn to professionals. We turn to people who have been there, done that, to save ourselves time, to save ourselves frustration, to save ourselves money. And ultimately, when it comes to our kids, is to put them in the best possible situation. So that's really why you should really give strong consideration. And I'm gonna be very honest. If your kid is like a basketball player and they're like 6'10",
Yeah.
270, and they dunking on people like Giannis, and they got a jump shot like Steph, then yeah, don't call us. You don't need our help. Just make sure you preach grades so that they're eligible, but they're going to be okay. You're not my target audience. My target audience is like the other 98% of student athletes who just fly under the radar for whatever reason. My goal is to kind of, get you young enough too, like 8th grade going into 9th grade, so that I can tell you about your core classes. I can tell you about the importance of getting off to a strong start. And then, so that's why that's my message to parents is, if you have and that's another thing, make sure you get the buy-in from your student athletes, because I think that's one of the biggest things that I tell people too, is like, are you positive that your son or daughter actually wants to play at the next level? Because if they don't, then why are you doing all this travel ball and everything to begin with? So you really want to get that buy-in from your student athletes. So that'll be my message to parents. But then as far as, what I do, it's the company is You Recruit You. So that's the letter U, then the word recruit, and then the letter U. So You Recruit You. You can go to yourecruityou.com. We're on social media at You Recruit You. Got a TikTok, got a Twitter, got a Instagram page. And then of course we do have, through You Recruit You, we have my podcast, Full Ride. And Full Ride is a podcast I have, every week. Just search Full Ride College Recruiting Podcast, subscribe, leave us a review if you like, if you find this helpful. But so in addition to the podcast, I do go to schools. I work with, individual families, and I give speeches and all types of stuff. So I'm pretty easy to find at You Recruit You. You can email me, coachkito@gmail.com. So that's coach, KITO @gmail.com. But ultimately, being a former college athlete, I was really, really blessed to get a full ride scholarship. I played at Northeastern University football. Before that, I was at Boston University for 1 year, but then they cut the program. So I actually have the distinct privilege, I guess you can say, of going through the recruiting process 2 times. So I take all those experiences and I'm really able to share them with our family so that they don't make the same mistakes that me and my family made, when we navigated it ourselves.
Awesome. Coach Kito, man, this was a blessing. This was a lot of fun. We got to get together and do this again.
Yeah. I'm going to have you on my podcast, man.
Hey, let's do it. I'm ready.
We'll get you.
We can just pick a topic and we can just go for it.
I got it. Cause I love it. I've been following you ever since you reached out. I love what you're doing. I want to commend you. We were just kind of talking about this earlier. There are millions of student athletes out there, trying to make it to that next level. And we need more people in this space to collaborate, to share our experience, to share our knowledge, our resources, and we got to pull together. So, you reaching out, I was humbled that you did so, but then B, I was super excited to join you. And I just love what you're doing. So I just wanted to commend you and just wish you to continue success. And if I can be of help to you directly or the families that you work with, don't hesitate to reach out anytime.
Yeah. We're fighting the same fight, my man.
Absolutely.